In the 15th year since I found Jason, and the 10th year of our romance, he finally submitted a marriage application to the military. However, the name on the report was not mine, but that of Tina, the only daughter of his late teacher. I thought it was a slip of the hand and reminded him to rewrite it. But Jason firmly stated, "I will only give you a de facto marriage, but the position of wife must belong to Tina. In that case, I wish you a harmonious union for 100 years. And I wish myself to find another good match. May I ask if this is Ms. Tina? We are from a certain military unit. Comrade Jason has submitted a marriage application report, and due to certain reasons, we need to verify your family situation with you." I was stunned. Jason is indeed my boyfriend, but Tina is the only daughter of his deceased teacher. I reminded them, "Did you make a mistake? Isn't the name on Jason's marriage report Aileen?" The other party replied, "It's not wrong, Jason specifically reminded us that it's Tina. He wrote several applications." "Ah, sorry, perhaps the phone number was written incorrectly. The other application forms all have another number, it must be Comrade Jason's mistake. Sorry to bother you." The other party hung up the phone, and it wasn't until I heard the busy tone that I came to my senses. I vaguely understood that the name on Jason's marriage report was not mine. He had no intention of marrying me at all. If it was just one form written wrong, that could be excusable, but so many reports all written incorrectly. I clenched my fists, but my body still couldn't stop trembling. Has it finally come to this? Am I finally going to lose Jason? This long-distance race of love has finally welcomed a winner. Unfortunately, it's not me. Clearly, this matter had already shown initial signs in these past few years, and it was becoming increasingly impossible for me to ignore. But I was unwilling to give up this relationship. Back then, Jason had nothing, his biological parents died in a car accident. None of his relatives were willing to help him. It was I who picked him up from downstairs and begged my parents to take in Jason. The 15-year-old boy pursed his thin lips tightly, his eyes bloodshot. He hugged me tightly and said he would repay me. I never asked for repayment, I just felt that he needed me very much. In the year he turned 20, he confessed his feelings. Jason said he would spend his entire life treating me well. However, my father had an accident that same year. While my mother and I were immersed in grief, Jason proposed dropping out of school to join the army. He left resolutely, leaving me no room to retain him. With my father gone, my mother could no longer support the tuition for both of us. I knew he was being considerate of my mother. This departure lasted for 10 years. Whenever we had time, we would send each other text messages, sharing what we saw and heard in life. I always regarded Jason as an inseparable part of my life. At this moment, my heart was bleeding. But I couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. I sent him a message. The words on the screen stung my eyes. During this period, it was always me sending messages to him unilaterally. He occasionally replied with one word, busy. Clearly, he didn't say much, but I always felt like I was disturbing him. On one hand, I felt deeply guilty and didn't want to bother him, on the other, I wanted to talk to him because I loved him and wanted to be close to him. My eyes were sore, and there were some things I had to clarify. I asked him, "Did you write my name wrong on the marriage report?" I thought the sent message would sink into the sea as usual. Unexpectedly, Jason replied. "Aileen, the report didn't have the wrong name. You and I are already considered a de facto couple. Whether the marriage report includes you or not is the same, even if the marriage certificate doesn't have your name, the position of wife in my heart is yours." My mind went blank. I actually didn't understand what he meant. Are you going to commit bigamy? Or turn me, your girlfriend, into your extramarital mistress with Tina? Suppressing the sour pain in my heart, I typed these words with trembling fingers. Jason started typing after a while, then paused. Typing, pausing. Hope arose in my heart, he must have his difficulties. As long as he explained clearly, I could overlook this time. He could just rewrite the marriage report. I silently prayed in my heart, begging him to give me a reasonable explanation. But in the end, he only sent a few short words: "I cannot let down my teacher, and I must protect Tina." Tears fell on the phone, blurring the text on it. The pain in my heart was sharp. I closed my eyes, wiped away the tears, my head hurt, but I still forced myself to calm down. I asked him, "What about me? You cannot let down your teacher, cannot be unfilial to your teacher's wife, and cannot fail to care for your sister Tina. Do I deserve to wait for you for 10 years? Jason, what exactly do you take me for? Was I a rope in times of despair? Or just a tool for his survival?" A chill surged from the soles of my feet to my heart, making me shiver with cold. No, it couldn't be. If these years of feelings were just pretend, how could he pretend for so long? Jason didn't explain further, just said to me, "When I return, I will give you an explanation." When I tried to send something again, I found that I had been blocked. At this moment, I was in pain to the point of numbness. Indeed, the closest people know how to hurt me the deepest. I flipped through our chat records over and over again. 10 years, with too many memories. But the more I recalled, the more I couldn't sleep. That night, I suffered from insomnia. Could it be that Jason and I are really over? But if not over, what then? Is this embarrassing love really what I need? A month later, Jason returned. Upon hearing that Jason was coming back, my mother aired out the bedding for him and made the dishes he liked. We waited for him at home until 11 o'clock at night, but he didn't come back. My mother couldn't hold on and went to sleep first. Without any food intake, my body felt very cold. I sat at the table looking at the call records. I had called him many times, but none went through. I took a deep breath, thinking to call one last time. If it didn't go through. The call connected. I said in surprise, "Jason." From the other side came a girl's soft and sweet voice, "Brother Jason is taking a shower. Do you have something for him? We met the parents today, and he drank quite a bit. If it's not important, can you talk to your brother tomorrow?" Brother? Jason's note for me is sister? So 10 years of feelings exchanged for the identity of a sister. I said hoarsely, "Nothing," hanging up. But how could it be nothing? I covered my head and silently shed tears. I didn't even dare to cry loudly, afraid my mother would hear and worry about me. At this moment, my heart was dissected, and the one holding the knife was my childhood sweetheart whom I had loved for over a decade. That night was like a nightmare. The next day, Jason finally came back. He entered the door and first greeted my mother, who responded lukewarmly. She probably sensed my abnormality, so she lost enthusiasm for Jason as well. On the table were the reheated dishes from yesterday. Jason was stunned looking at the food, then picked up a bowl and chopsticks and sat down to eat. Seeing Jason eating heartily, my mother's expression improved a bit. But he clearly didn't like eating leftovers, he did this just to reduce his own guilt. My mother didn't ask much. After eating and cleaning up, she went downstairs to exercise. Jason helped carry the bowls and plates to the kitchen, and I slowly washed them. He looked at me and came over wanting to hug me. I dodged. Jason pursed his lips, the vein on his forehead throbbing. His voice carried fatigue and disappointment. "Aileen, I thought you would understand." My eyes heated up, and I asked aggrievedly, "How should I understand?" Go ask any girl on the street how she would view her partner getting a marriage certificate with another woman. After saying the last sentence, tears fell uncontrollably. Jason panicked for a moment and took a tissue to wipe my tears. He sighed heavily, "I grew up with you, you should know my heart. Teacher Samuel died protecting me. The only thing I can do now is give Tina a title so that people around won't bully their mother and daughter." My heart suddenly ached. I could understand his respect for Teacher Samuel. But has he ever thought that my mother and I are also vulnerable? What's the difference from the song Family Mother and Daughter? After waiting all night, I finally received my judgment. This relationship was ultimately my mistake. I put down the bowl and chopsticks and said indifferently, "Jason, let's break up." Jason suddenly stiffened. Jason gritted his teeth, looked down at me, took a few deep breaths, and asked, "Are you serious? You know I only have responsibility towards Tina, no feelings. The one I've liked from beginning to end is only you. Even so, you still want to break up?" He emphasized the word responsibility heavily. Hee, how ridiculous. It's responsibility towards Tina, but not towards me? I looked at him, wanting to see him clearly. But between us, it's not just Tina separating us. I couldn't see him clearly anymore. Seeing that I didn't speak, Jason couldn't help but say, "Don't overthink it. I only love you. I will hold a wedding with you, everyone will know you are my wife, just without the marriage certificate. There won't be any changes between us." But I couldn't deceive myself. Because from the moment his teacher's wife and daughter appeared, there was indeed an irreversible change between him and me, a change he hadn't even noticed. Bigamy. How dare you? Don't you care about your future, Jason? I said sarcastically. I know you love me, so how about this first? I'll get the certificate with my junior sister first, protect their mother and daughter. The teacher's wife said that as long as we wait until Tina's job is stable, we'll divorce. It's just a few years. You've waited 10 years, a year or two more won't matter, right? My heart suddenly stopped for a moment, then started beating rapidly. The current Jason felt very strange to me, not at all the same person who promised not to let me suffer grievances. Once I repay the kindness, I'll spend the rest of my life with you. I knew he wouldn't listen to whatever I said. But it didn't matter anymore. Anyway, we wouldn't get married. At this time, his phone rang. I saw Tina's name, he glanced at me warily, took the phone to the balcony to answer. I don't know what was said on the other side, Jason said okay. Then he came over wanting to hug me, but after I dodged. He said in a cold and hard voice, "I have some things to handle today, after I'm done, I'll take you out to eat." After saying that, he turned and left. I squatted on the ground dejectedly, holding my head and reflecting on myself. Where exactly did it go wrong? Or was our relationship unable to withstand the test? Suddenly, the door was knocked, the neighbor's anxious voice came, "Aileen. Bad news. Your mother fainted." I stood up abruptly, my vision blacking out for a moment. I was extremely scared inside. Mom, I only have my mom. No, I absolutely cannot lose my mom. Soon, the ambulance took my mother to the hospital. She woke up on the way and kept emphasizing that she was fine, but I insisted on taking her to the hospital for a checkup. During the blood draw, we encountered Tina. This girl, whenever Jason came back, would definitely cling to him. And I, as his girlfriend, had to yield every time. What Tina liked to eat, I couldn't touch. Clothes that Tina liked, I couldn't wear the same type. Jason turned all his guilt into pampering Tina. Half of his allowance went to their mother and daughter. And at this moment, when she saw me, she was like a victorious fox. "Sister Aileen? Why are you at the hospital too? You wouldn't be tracking brother Jason, would you? Why bring Auntie along?" "I'm just doing a premarital checkup with brother Jason, you don't have to make such a fuss, right? Does brother Jason even have freedom at your home?" My mother was stunned by Tina's words. She looked at me, frowning and asking, "Aileen, what does she mean?" "What does?" "Auntie, I mean, brother Jason and I are getting married. You must come to our wedding." The checkup sheet in my mother's hand fell to the ground with a patter. What? Of course, she knew about my relationship with Jason. At home, we even shared a room. I never thought of hiding my relationship with Jason from my mother. She tacitly approved. I tried to soothe my mother, "Mom, listen to me, it's not like that. Sister Aileen, you wouldn't still be hoping that brother Jason will marry you, would you? What do you have compared to me? You're older than me, and uglier. If I were brother Jason, I wouldn't choose you either." My mother couldn't stand anyone talking about me like that. She rushed up and slapped Tina. This came too suddenly. I almost didn't react. When I did, my mother had already been pushed away forcefully by Jason. "Auntie, please have some self-respect." My mother reacted, stepped forward, and raised her hand to slap Jason. "How dare you? How could you? Do you know what my family has sacrificed for you? You ungrateful wolf." My mother angrily clutched her chest and bent over. I hurriedly supported her swaying body. "Mom, please don't say any more. Jason and I have already broken up. Whoever he marries has nothing to do with me anymore. Mom, let's go." I was almost begging my mother. Even if I lost, I didn't want to be pointed at like this. Besides, what's the use of arguing right or wrong? A relationship that can't go back, no matter how much said, won't go back. Woo-woo, brother Jason, I really just came to greet Auntie. I accidentally mentioned the premarital checkup, and she thought I snatched you from Sister Aileen. I can understand Auntie, but brother Jason and I really aren't what you think. Enough. I angrily rebuked Tina. At such a time, she was still adding fuel to the fire. Jason's cold and stern gaze swept over, his thin lips carried a bit of sarcasm. "Have Auntie apologize to Tina, and this matter will be over." My mother looked at Jason in disbelief and sneered, "What did you say? Have me apologize to this little vixen? Does she deserve it?" Tina said tearfully, "Brother Jason, it's okay for me. Although Auntie is wrong, I won't mind. Moreover, Auntie is an elder. If an apology is necessary, how about having Sister Aileen simply say sorry to me?" I looked at Tina coldly and countered, "Where did I wrong you?" Tina looked at Jason aggrievedly. Jason's gaze towards me grew colder. "Apologize, or call the police. Choose one." My heart plummeted into an icy abyss. My mother moved her hand from clutching her chest. She smiled sarcastically, "Jason, you've really made something of yourself. Fine, call the police, I'll wait for them to detain me." People gathered around, all pointing at my mother and me. "No, like mother like daughter, how can they hit someone and not apologize? So stubborn? Yeah, this is a hospital with surveillance, really not afraid of police detention? Or do they have strong backing?" Tina cried, "Auntie, I know Uncle was a police officer before he passed." "Tina, shut up. How dare she mention my father?" Jason blocked in front of Tina, coldly threatening, "You probably don't want Uncle to have no peace in the underworld, right?" My mother suddenly rolled her eyes and fainted. Tina whispered, "Faking a faint is too low level. Brother Jason, I don't need an apology, let Auntie get up." I held my mother and shouted to the people, "Help. My mother fainted. Save my mother." A doctor came over but was stopped by someone. "Don't bother with them. It's all fake. Hit someone without apologizing and fake fainting." I looked at Jason and asked hoarsely, "Do you also think Mom is faking it? She fainted once this morning." But Jason frowned, not believing me. "Aileen, when I left this morning, Auntie was clearly fine." The pointing voices around grew more. The doctor also wavered. I closed my eyes, then opened them full of coldness. I didn't look at Jason again. To Tina, I said, "Sorry, my mother shouldn't have hit you. I apologize on her behalf, please forgive." "Sister Aileen, don't say that, I won't mind." "Brother Jason, you're a soldier, it's not good if someone takes photos. Let's go first?" After Tina said that, she held Jason's hand. Jason just stiffened for a moment. Seeing that I didn't even look over, he looked at the marks on Tina's face, no longer hesitated, and took her away to check her face. "Who can help me? My mother really fainted, please believe me." My voice was almost inaudible. In my plea for help, suddenly a doctor squeezed through the crowd. He checked my mother's condition and shouted to the people, "Quick! The patient is almost gone. Send to the operating room immediately." Doctors surged over, while Jason in the distance just glanced this way. Tina said nervously, "Could it be that Auntie really had an accident?" Jason said, "Definitely not, Eileen's mom has always been in good health. Tina, don't meet them alone in the future." Jason felt that today's incident was my mother's fault. But ultimately, it was because he didn't explain clearly. He wanted to find time to explain to my mother. He didn't want Tina to be implicated by him. But thinking of my attitude, he couldn't help feeling depressed. Tina held Jason's arm coquettishly. "Okay, I'll listen to brother Jason," but Jason just gently pulled his arm away and said faintly, "Let's go." A flash of disappointment passed through Tina's eyes. She took her phone and sent a text message. Soon, Jason's phone rang. Jason was originally very irritable. When he saw the caller's name, he hesitated for a few seconds but still answered. "Jason, did the teacher's wife disturb you and Tina? The teacher's wife fell and feels uncomfortable in the heart. Can you come back now?" Jason no longer hesitated. "Teacher's wife, don't worry first, we'll come back immediately." Tina raised a smug smile, then anxiously left with Jason. She glanced at me and the hospital bed being pushed by the doctors, a flash of ruthlessness in her eyes. After my mother was pushed into the operating room, the critical illness notice was delivered to me. I could hardly stand steady and was supported by a nearby nurse. "Miss, you have to hold on, your mother hasn't escaped danger yet." I asked the doctor with red eyes, "Excuse me, what's wrong with my mother?" "It's a very serious heart disease, but don't worry, our hospital has an expert today. I've already called him. As long as he comes, your mother still has a chance." I bowed to thank the doctor. If I could exchange for my mother's health, I would do anything. The operating light stayed on. At this time, Jason came. Seeing me just staring blankly at the operating room, he immediately frowned. "Aileen, do you think this is fun? Who are you waiting for here? Don't tell me Auntie is in the operating room. Faking illness should have limits." I mechanically turned my head to look at him, not understanding his meaning. "Having Auntie fake a heart disease and mess around in the operating room? Is this your way to make me turn back?" My heart completely died, thoroughly dead. I glared at him as if looking at an enemy, gritting my teeth. "Please get out. I don't want to see you again." Because of the force, blood slid directly from the corner of my lips. Jason's pupils contracted. He was somewhat angered by my attitude of resistance and disgust. "Clearly it's Auntie's fault. You can't side with Auntie just because you're her daughter. Aileen, you weren't like this before." I looked at him with red eyes and sneered. "Yes, before it was because I meddled too much that I took care of you. Jason, I regret it." Jason suddenly clenched his fists. For the first time, he saw hatred on my face. "Really, I beg you, don't appear in front of me, okay? We're already over." I looked at Jason hysterically. But he seemed not to understand. He lowered his head and said, "Do you think saying this on purpose is fun? Aileen, you clearly know I love you. I'll wait for you to figure it out yourself." I closed my eyes, turned my head away, and no longer looked at him. After a while, the operating room opened. The doctor looked at me with some regret. "Sorry, miss." My legs weakened, and I fell to the ground. I looked at him and asked, "Didn't you say there's an expert? Why still not?" The doctor sighed. "The hospital has another patient who specifically requested my teacher. If the teacher could come back now, perhaps there's still time, but the other party has connections. I'm afraid we can't wait." I struggled to stand up and asked him, "Who is it? Tell me, I'll go beg him." When I heard the name Jason, I almost didn't react. At this time, I remembered. Jason was no longer the penniless boy from 10 years ago. He now held an official position, with power in his hands. But why would he use the power that my mother and I begged for him, turning it into a sharp sword pointed at my mother? I staggered to Tina's mother's room. As expected, the room was surrounded by a group of people. Jason's teacher's wife lay on the bed with a ruddy complexion, not looking seriously ill at all. I burst in, looking at them urgently. "Who is Dr. Leo? Please go save my mother." Dr. Leo turned to look at me. "I am Dr. Leo, Ethan called me. Is it about your mother's surgery?" Dr. Leo was also dragged with no way out. He was anxious inside. But his phone was taken away. He had no way, no strength. "Yes, it's my mother. Please come with me to see." "No. Tina loudly reprimanded me. She rushed over, red-eyed, scolding me, "Aileen. You're too. You clearly know my mom has heart discomfort. And you still want to call away the life-saving doctor. What are you thinking? Do you want to see my mom have an accident that badly? I shouldn't marry Brother Jason, I beg you, don't hurt my mom. I won't marry Brother Jason, okay? Even if my mom and I are bullied by others, it doesn't matter, as long as my mom is healthy." She broke down crying. I was so anxious I didn't want to say more to her and went to pull Dr. Leo. Jason's teacher's wife said weakly, "Forget it, Tina, I'm fine. Since Miss Aileen wants to vent, I can let the doctor go to her mother." "Just, Miss Aileen, I beg you, after I'm gone, can you not make things difficult for Tina? I beg you." As she said that, she struggled to get up from the bed to kneel to me. I was made somewhat powerless by their mother and daughter. Just as I was about to reason with them, Jason said coldly, "Today, no one will leave here. Aileen. You've disappointed me too much. You know the teacher's wife has health issues, yet you still want to take the doctor away. How are you as vicious as your mother? Didn't you say you didn't want to see me? Now please leave." I breathed rapidly a few times, looking at Jason. He didn't look like he was joking. In that instant, I panicked. I stepped forward, grabbed Jason's clothes, and begged, "Jason, I beg you. Let the doctor save my mother, okay? If Tina's mom has a problem, I'll pay with my life, okay? I can't be without my mother." I knelt down, hugging Jason's leg and begging him. Jason's pupils contracted, his fingertips trembled, but in the end, he didn't extend his hand. Tina looked at Jason nervously and whispered, "Brother Jason, I only have my mom. My dad was for you. I don't want to lose my mom again. Please." The people in the room looked at each other. Dr. Leo wanted to speak but stopped. And finally, Jason said to me coldly, "You don't have to go this far. Auntie is clearly fine, what are you doing? Go out now, and I can overlook it, otherwise, there's no possibility between us." At such a time, he still mentioned feelings with me. Does he even have a heart? In the end, I was driven out of the ward. Before the ward door closed, I looked at Jason despairingly, self-mockingly and full of hatred. "Jason, do you know? I now regret bringing you home back then. I regret everything that happened between us. If something happens to Mom, I will never forgive you." Jason's heart trembled. He had never seen me so resolute. Every word I said made his breathing heavy. How could I regret? He thought of the year he had nothing. I descended like an angel, extending a hand of salvation to him. I gave him the only warmth in the world, giving him hope to continue. But I suddenly withdrew my hand. He clenched his fists, watching my lonely departing back. He thought I was just angry. Once the teacher's wife was safe, he would apologize to me. He would also make my mother forgive him. After all, our mother and daughter were easy to coax. So Jason closed the door. I heard the door closing sound, and finally, the string in my mind snapped. I fainted on the ground. When I woke up again, I was on a hospital bed. Recalling my mother in surgery, I immediately threw off the blanket to get up. I was held down by the doctor. "Don't move. Your body now can't move vigorously." It was Dr. Ethan. "My mother. Auntie, she hasn't woken up yet." I breathed a sigh of relief, finally feeling like I could breathe. I lowered my head and cried silently, "Sorry, I really. I understand you. Your mother is an amazing person, I've met her before." I looked at Dr. Ethan in surprise, but had no impression. Although he was very handsome, he was very unfamiliar. However, his aura was very affable. I asked him, "Can I go see my mother? The effects of your mother's medication haven't worn off yet." The teacher made it in the end, but unfortunately delayed too long. The teacher could only barely prevent your mother from dying on the operating table, but... My heart tightened. Thank you. I knew that my mother became like this not because of the hospital's problem. It was Jason. Thinking of Jason, I almost hated him enough to grind my teeth. I thought clearly, from now on, we go our separate ways. I don't want any entanglement with him anymore. In the middle of the night, I slept groggily. In the dream, I dreamed I returned to the time I picked up Jason. I stood indifferently on the side watching him. Jason was so pitiful, but in the dream, I clearly remembered how detestable he is now. I said to him, "Jason, I don't want you anymore." Suddenly, my wrist was gripped by someone. In the pain, I met Jason's eyes. His breath carried a bit of coldness. "What did you just say?" I silently withdrew my arm, having nothing to say. I thought he came to see my mother, but he didn't ask a single question. He just said, "Auntie, indulging you in making such a fuss is what made you faint. Aileen, stop fussing with me, okay? I'm already very tired. Advise Auntie more, let her not make things difficult for Tina and the teacher's wife. They are all innocent. If Auntie keeps this attitude, I probably won't go to your home in the future." I said coldly, "You don't need to come to my home. You and I have no relationship." Jason said angrily, "What exactly are you minding? Your mother has no problem, the one lying in bed is the teacher's wife, okay?" I looked up in shock, just about to tell the truth. Jason's phone rang. He hesitated for a moment and said to me, "Rest well, I'll come see you at dawn." I said coldly, "No need. I don't need you." He clenched his fists without responding. I lay weakly, thinking, whatever. Anyway, I won't look at him again. After enduring for over half an hour, I was very anxious inside. I took out my phone and looked. In moments, Tina updated a post. In the photo, Jason was serving Tina's mom tea. Looking at the scene of filial piety, I smiled sarcastically. My mother paid so much for Jason but didn't get a cup of water from him. Indeed, my mother and I both have poor eyesight. In a few seconds, Tina posted a photo wearing a ring. In the photo, 2 hands were tightly clasped. Looking at that, I couldn't help but laugh. Laughing and laughing, I cried. That ring was designed by me personally, a wedding ring set hiding my and Jason's names. He actually gave it to Tina without my consent. I suddenly felt like I was a complete joke. Thoroughly. WeChat dinged. Those who have my WeChat also have Tina's. These days, everyone has come to their senses and asked me what's going on. I replied, "It's just as you see, we broke up." No longer waiting for replies, I deleted Tina, deleted Jason, deleted everything related to him. Then I lay on the bed numbly and coldly. Finally, after the injection, Dr. Ethan came to notify me that my mother was about to wake up. I got up excitedly, almost falling. Dr. Ethan helplessly used a wheelchair to take me to see my mother. On the way, we bumped into Tina. I ignored her. She looked at me with complex eyes and took a photo of our backs. Seeing my mother again, my heart trembled. In just one day, my mother seemed much more haggard. Her face was terrifyingly pale, making me sting with pain just from one look, unable to look directly at her again. But I couldn't bear not to look. Because I understood that every look now was the last one. "Mom? Mom?" I called her with quivering lips. Afraid that my own breathing would disturb the balance of the instruments. My mother's eyelashes trembled a few times, slowly opening her eyes. My tears couldn't stop falling. The oxygen mask blocked her words, my mother's fingers moved, and I carefully held her hand. She looked at me with loving eyes, tinged with a bit of heartache. Clearly, the anesthesia had just worn off, her mind shouldn't be clear so quickly. But still, at the first sight of me, she felt heartache for me. I sobbed uncontrollably, "Mom, I'm fine, don't worry about me. I don't like Jason anymore, really. I hate him now. I wished I could kill him. Unfortunately, I didn't have that ability." Dr. Ethan looked at the instruments and whispered, "Say a few last words to Auntie." He gently removed my mother's oxygen mask. My mother took a few deep breaths, and after calming down, said to me with difficulty, "Aileen, no, don't hate, be be yourself. Mom is going to accompany Dad. Mom misses him. My mother's tears fell, and I cried messily following her. Mom, but I miss you too, I can't. I choked. I couldn't let my mother be uneasy, I had to let her go peacefully. Aileen, go love someone else, don't, again, love Jason. I nodded. As if all the love for Jason before had now turned into slaps, one by one on my face. Jason was my retribution. Mary, Re. My mother stubbornly held my hand, her eyes staring straight at me. Dr. Ethan came over, looked at the instruments a few times, and suddenly held my mother's and my hands. He said sincerely, Auntie, my name is Ethan, I'm 30 this year, no girlfriend, no bad habits, have a car and house. I received help from Uncle before and have always liked Aileen. If you don't mind me, I will take your place and continue to take care of Aileen. My mother's gaze fell on Ethan. Her eyes cleared for a moment. I remember. Ethan, Aileen is a good child, I will treat Aileen well, after we get the certificate, show you the marriage certificate, okay? My mother was satisfied, she smiled looking at me. Burn a copy of the marriage certificate for me and your dad, he must want to see you and your son-in-law. As my mother said that, she had me take the ring on my hand and the one hanging on a string around her neck. You and Aileen, one each. Be good. Aileen, Mom's Aileen. Mom can't bear. My mother said and said, then no sound. Her tears slid down, like cutting open my heart. Mom. Don't. I completely fainted. When I woke up again, Dr. Ethan was still guarding me. I opened my mouth and found my throat couldn't make a sound. Don't speak, you hurt your throat yesterday. Now, Aileen, listen to me. Ethan looked at me seriously and took out his ID card, household register, property deed, car registration, passbook, etc. I've already helped send Auntie to the funeral home. Cremation tomorrow. Aileen, you should fulfill Auntie's last wish. Don't worry, I won't take advantage, I just don't want to disappoint Auntie. She was such a good person. My tears fell. Although Ethan said my father helped him, he was a stranger to us. A stranger, in just one day, knew my mother was a very good person. But Jason thought my mother and I were both vicious. Thinking of my mother's last wish, I looked at Ethan and said hoarsely, Dr. Ethan, I had a terrible romance, I must confess to you. But I can guarantee to you that I have no lingering feelings for my ex. I hate him now. Of course, my mother didn't let me hate him, in the future, I'll just treat him as a stranger. So if you marry me, I'll be good to you. Besides that, I couldn't think of anything else. Ethan sighed helplessly, what are you thinking? I didn't do this for, never mind, I'll wait for you to be good to me later. He took me to the marriage registration office. Fortunately, now you can register without the household register. After getting the marriage certificate and making copies, Ethan took me to the market to buy things for my mother's send-off. He seemed very knowledgeable about these. Thank you, if not for you, I wouldn't know what to do. Besides saying thank you, I seemed not to know what else to say to him. Ethan was helpless again, he reached out and rubbed my head. Never say thank you to me, the one who should say thank you is me. I looked at him in surprise. Suddenly, a cold and stern voice interrupted the atmosphere between us. What are you doing? I turned to look, it was Jason. My face instantly cooled, looking at him, my teeth chattered with cold. Ethan protected me and said to Jason, may I ask if you have business? Who the fuck are you? Is it your business? I'm looking for my girlfriend, what's it to you? Ethan's gaze was serious and disdainful as he sized up Jason. He smiled ambiguously, provoking Jason to want to make a move. Of course, I couldn't watch him make a move on Ethan. I immediately went over and asked coldly, what do you want with me? I remember we have no relationship anymore. Jason pulled me to the side, glared at Ethan, then said to me, why block me? Why delete my phone number? Why even my friends you? All things I don't need, why keep them if not delete? To disgust myself? Jason, don't think too highly of yourself. I don't want you anymore, do you understand? Jason breathed heavily a few times. He lowered his voice. Aileen, what's wrong with you? I won't mind you finding such a man to provoke me, nor mind your lying. I saw Auntie's report, it's just stomach disease, no big problem. Has Auntie gone home now? What are you doing here with this man? I scoffed, tears falling first. Jason, you really make me sick. Jason's pupils contracted, he opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. My naked disgust stimulated him. Something in his heart was losing at a speed he couldn't retain. He wanted to hold on forcefully. So he said to me, you just need to make soup for the teacher's wife, I'll speak for you and Auntie. They aren't petty people, they'll forgive you. In the future, the teacher's wife will also be our mom. I couldn't bear it anymore, raised my hand, and slapped Jason with all my strength. I have no mother anymore. Forever no more. Are you satisfied? Jason, I should have let you rot back then. You deserve to be alone. Get out. I pushed him hard, he staggered from my push, hitting the nearby wall. I turned and left with Ethan, no longer looking at Jason. Jason was very panicked at this moment. He vaguely felt that my mother might really have had an accident. But how dare he admit it? If he admitted, it would mean he blocked my mother's lifeline. Jason said flustered, no, it definitely isn't. Aileen, she just cares too much about me. Right, as long as I stop Auntie's Social Security, Aileen will definitely bow to me. Social Security was my mother's monthly economic source. As long as it stopped, they must bow. Jason seemed to grasp a straw, immediately calling his comrade. After hanging up, Jason lowered his eyes to the ground. He whispered, Aileen, I will definitely marry you. How can you regret? How can you not want me? But these voices scattered with the wind. Not a trace entered my ears. After handling my mother's funeral, when canceling her household registration, I went to Social Security to withdraw the balance on the card, wanting to use this money for my parents' joint burial. But they told me my mother's Social Security was frozen. The first thing I thought of was Jason's doing. Disappointment had reached its peak. I didn't know how to react to him anymore. After Ethan knew, he promised to help find someone to handle it. I was very grateful to him and said, no need, I still have money, it should be enough, if not, borrow a bit more. I didn't want to beg Jason because that would dirty my parents' reincarnation path. Ethan was very busy, I was embarrassed to trouble him all the time. But for the days of relocating my parents' graves, he specially took leave to help me. That day, Ethan and I came out of the community and bumped into Jason. Jason saw me and Ethan coming from the same place and immediately reddened his eyes. You actually brought him home to see your mom? Aileen, even acting has limits. Today, I didn't want to say a word to him. My mood was already bad, seeing him subconsciously made me nauseous. Ethan blocked Jason, Mr. Jason, know when to stop. Since you chose another, don't disturb Aileen, Aileen will have a new life too. Jason scoffed, looking at Ethan as if looking at garbage. What do you understand? Aileen loved me for 10 years. You know nothing. And you come to judge our relationship? Are you worthy? Aileen, after Tina's job stabilizes, I'll divorce her, don't worry, I won't make you wait too long. I left directly, hearing Jason say 10 years, I just thought it was fed to a dog. No, Jason was worse than a dog. He was an untamable wolf cub. Seeing Jason harassing me all the time, Ethan suggested I stay at his home first. I thought Ethan had helped me so much, I should fulfill my promise and take good care of him. But I absolutely didn't think of anything with Ethan in front. If he has someone he likes, I can divorce him immediately. I really thank him. What I seek now is just to let my parents rest in peace. Jason has been very annoyed lately, he can't find me. No matter through what channels, he can't find me. At gatherings, if someone mentions me, he gets angry. Suddenly someone asked about my mother's funeral. Jason was stunned, then fought with that person, saying he was nonsense. Everyone looked at him with complex faces. Jason was extremely panicked, but tomorrow was his wedding with Tina. He increasingly couldn't feel at ease. Tina also asked him, "Brother Jason, tomorrow we get married, will Sister Aileen come back? Is she still angry? I can apologize to her. I really thought my mom was dying then, I was really too scared." Tina cried again, but this time, Jason didn't coax her. He just said coldly, "Aileen isn't that petty. She should come." Jason had no confidence, he couldn't wait for me at my home. He called me countless times, none connected. He messaged me saying, "Tomorrow as long as I go, the bride will be me." But who cares? Even if I saw this sentence, I would only feel disgusted. He was panicked beyond measure and finally went to the hospital personally to check that day's surveillance. Only then did he discover that after they left, my mother was sent to the operating room. Moreover, he found my mother's examination results. Acute heart disease. My mother's heart had long become fragile due to my father's death. These years, if not for wanting to see me get married, perhaps she couldn't hold on long ago. She just didn't show it in front of me. When he clearly saw my mother's medical record as confirmed death, Jason's mind buzzed. His vision blurred, temporarily blinded. "Mr. Jason, are you okay? I want to check Mabel's medical record," Jason said urgently. Because of the dean's instructions, the doctor still helped retrieve the record. The record clearly stated, "No issues with body, suggest follow-up." Jason had tinnitus for a moment. Tina and her mother's faces appeared together with mine and my mother's. But he could no longer find that initial feeling. He could no longer deceive himself. He almost dared not imagine how desperate I was after losing my mother. "Aileen, I was wrong. Aileen, where exactly are you?" Jason slapped himself hard, crying uncontrollably. Suddenly his phone rang. Jason saw it was Tina and directly hung up. In a few seconds, Mabel called. And this time, Jason didn't answer either. He just indifferently hung up and blocked. Mabel and Tina were anxious. "Mom, nothing will happen, right?" "What could happen? You've already got the marriage certificate. Now as long as the wedding is held, it's a done deal, nothing can change anymore." But the unease in Tina's heart was gradually amplifying. She worried, "Mom, do you think Brother Jason will know about that matter?" Mabel's eyes turned cold for a moment, saying coldly, "Of course he won't know. He will never know." On the third day, Tina wore a wedding dress, the home was full of guests. Each congratulated them for finally making it. They also said Jason knows to repay kindness. Mabel smiled calmly, looking like a widow who endured. But waiting left and right, Jason didn't come. Tina was very anxious, Mabel couldn't stay calm anymore. Finally, Mabel cried to the media friends she called. It must be Jason's childhood sweetheart causing trouble, relying on helping Jason before to threaten him to marry her. But Jason likes only my Tina. My Samuel lost his life saving Jason back then. Even for repaying kindness, Jason can't not come. The media friends were indignant. They directly posted on Weibo a message titled "Third Party Interfering in Military Marriage." Soon, it got many reposts. Everyone dug out my information and called me maliciously. After answering a few, I realized I had been doxxed. At the wedding, Tina cried pitifully. Facing the camera, "Sister Aileen, Brother Jason really just wants to take care of me, let him come back, I won't mind if he takes care of you too." Everyone commented that Tina was too kind. Some even found the matter of Samuel saving Jason back then. My heart sank. If Samuel saved Jason, what about my father? So all these years, the reason my father wasn't rated as a martyr was because Samuel obstructed. I wanted to find those people from back then to ask clearly. But it was too hard, 10 years had passed. Things had changed, people were different. But effort pays off, I finally found evidence. When I returned to the old house wanting to retrieve my mother's photos and keepsakes, I flipped to my father's autopsy report after the incident back then. And a videotape. Just that at the time, when my mother gave the things to others, they were secretly stopped by Mabel's people. Because Tina's father also died in that fire. After Jason was unconscious, he didn't know who exactly saved him. Mabel attributed the life-saving grace to teacher Samuel. And the video of my father saving Jason happened to be captured by a photographer and given to my mother as evidence. But my mother had no connections, no one cared what she said. And my father just died due to improper defense and duty. Not sacrifice, just death in line of duty. When I saw Jason outside the door, I handed him the recorded video. Not seen for a few days, he looked very disheveled. How could this be? After watching the video, Jason fell into collapse. He had been repaying kindness all along, but got the wrong person from the start. Tears in my eyes, I felt my father saved the wrong person back then. And I loved the wrong person. Aileen, I was wrong. I really was wrong. Jason was panicked, fear slowly rising in his heart. He didn't marry Tina, he wanted to salvage me. So these days, he had been custom-making rings. At this moment, Jason knelt on the ground and took out that pair of rings identical to my design. Aileen, do you remember this ring? We agreed back then. I don't want it. This thing, keep it if you like, throw it if not. I don't even want you, how could a mere ring catch my eye? I directly interrupted Jason's salvage coldly. Jason hugged my waist forcefully, resting his head on my waist. He trembled all over and said, Aileen, I really didn't mean it. Forgive me, okay? Seeing I ignored him, just turning my head away. He said tremblingly, I will definitely give Uncle justice. I won't let the Song family go. I lowered my head, carefully looking at this boy I once liked. Now, although his figure overlapped with memories, there was no similarity. Just like the fake ring that fell on the ground. He had long lost his true self. Aileen, don't ignore me, okay? I'll give you an explanation, will you forgive me? He said the last part cautiously. My eyes were cold, I pushed him away forcefully. I pointed to my mother's photo on the table, I have no mother anymore. As for you, if you want my forgiveness, sure, bring my mother back to life. Do you remember? It was you who killed my mother with your own hands. Jason had no defense, he said hoarsely, the dead can't be revived, I'll take care of you in Auntie's place, Aileen. But I shook my head, my mom's dying words were to let me stay away from you. Jason sat dejectedly on the ground. He said weakly and despondently, what exactly do I have to do for you to forgive me? Is my death okay? I'll pay with my life for Auntie. I said ruthlessly, what are you? Even if you die, I won't forgive you, I'll curse you, let you never be reborn. Get out. Hatred without love, pure, made Jason shudder. I forcefully pushed Jason out the door, threw the ring out. I don't want any of them. Then closed the door. Just as resolutely as when he closed the door in the hospital. I was wrong, I really was wrong. Aileen, you can't not want me. From beginning to end, I love only you. But did he think his love was something precious? Even if precious, I don't care. Jason knew his mistake was irreparable. A flash of ruthlessness in his eyes. All this, blame Tina and her mother. He wanted revenge. Ethan reported Jason for abusing power, interfering with doctors treating patients, leading to the patient's failed rescue and death. Jason was suspended for investigation. And he also posted a statement on Weibo. He narrated our relationship, saying a lot. Then released the video from back then. Reported Mabel for faking, etc. Soon, Mabel was investigated. Tina was scared to death, she searched for a long time and finally found Jason. Brother Jason, why treat my mom like that? These years, we were good to you. Jason just found it laughable. Was I not good to you these years? I was even better to you than to Aileen and her mother. How could you bear to deceive me? Don't come find me again, I've already filed for divorce on grounds of marriage fraud. We'll divorce soon. I'll marry Aileen. Aileen doesn't like seeing you. Tina laughed madly. No way. Jason, you still hope Aileen wants you? Jason grabbed Tina's neck, eyes bloodshot. You're seeking death. But Tina struggled and said, haha, good, let's die together. Do you know? Eileen's mom knew my dad stole all of Eileen's dads, but no one believed. After she knew Aileen fell in love with you, she couldn't bear to make you difficult and chose not to tell you. And she actually didn't know my dad and her husband were competing for credit. She's just not smart, deserves to die stupid. These words stimulated Jason. Jason almost lost reason and fiercely strangled Tina hard. As if Tina was something vicious. As long as you're gone, Aileen will definitely forgive me. Tina cast a disdainful glance at Jason. Suddenly, many people burst into the room. Police stepped forward to control Jason and said, Jason, you're arrested for suspected abuse of power and also suspected murder. When I knew about this, Jason was already in prison. But I didn't care. My mother's social security card could finally be used. My father also got posthumous honor. I buried my father and mother together. Ethan always accompanied me. He didn't comfort me, just gave me a solid embrace when I was sad. Gave me a cup of hot milk when I couldn't sleep. Even held my hand when I was lost. Ethan looked at me full of love and said, Aileen, our future is just beginning. You can reminisce the past, but can't indulge. Your life should also be brilliant. Netizens are now very friendly to me. I'll say it's not worth it for me. I don't care about netizens, I only know to live in the present. Jason's perspective. I finally got out of prison. The first thing after release was to find Aileen. But the old house had changed owners. She sold the old house. After many investigations, I finally found her and Ethan's home. Every day, fully disguised, I deliberately encountered her from afar. In just 5 years, she changed a lot. Actually, not short. These 5 years, I lived like years. My hair had turned gray. While Aileen was still beautiful and moving, exuding mature charm. She held a little girl's hand. That girl was as cute as she was in childhood. The girl always coquettishly softly, melting hearts. Aileen smiled and kissed the child's cheek. I thought inside, if we hadn't separated, our child might be this big too. But no ifs. I and my Aileen got separated in my foolishness back then. It was me who buried her love for me alive. And I can no longer love anyone, nor get any love. Although I put Mabel in prison and punished Tina. But my life seems meaningless. I turned and left. And after I left, Aileen looked this way. I somewhat puzzled, but more indifferent. Because Ethan came to pick up their mother and child. Their family of 3 happily went home. After seeing Aileen, I fulfilled my wish. No matter how miserable I am, Aileen doesn't care. I don't want to make Aileen forgive me by selling misery. I decided to go to the border, volunteer as a forest ranger. This lasted 10 years. In one avalanche, to protect a tourist, I was buried by heavy snow. In the last moment, I saw Aileen. That 10-year-old Aileen. I returned to when I was 15, abandoned by everyone. This time, Aileen didn't extend her hand to me again. She just looked at me indifferently, turned, and left. I opened my mouth but ultimately didn't call her. I thought, it's good too. This life's Aileen, without me, might be smoother. Hope Aileen never meets me again. I wish to never be reborn. I'm not atoning, it's deserved punishment.